In the heart of the Pacific, far from the major battles the world remembers, there is a place where an entire navy was erased in just 2 days. Its name is Truk Lagoon. Once the most powerful Japanese stronghold outside the home islands, it was believed to be the impregnable fortress of the Imperial Navy. And yet, in February 1944, it became the site of one of the most devastating air assaults of the Second World War. The operation had a code name that would echo through naval history: Operation Hailstone. To understand why this attack mattered so much, we need to step back to the early days of the Pacific War. For Japan, Truk Lagoon was more than a base. It was their Pearl Harbor, a natural wonder 40 miles across, with more than 200 coral islands. It formed a giant sheltered lagoon that could hide battleships, carriers, submarines, and supply fleets. By 1942, it was the beating heart of Japanese naval power. Every major operation, including the attack on Pearl Harbor and the battles of Coral Sea and Midway, passed through Truk. It was the hub for fuel, ammunition, aircraft, and the repair docks that kept the Japanese Navy alive. But by late 1943, the tide of war had reversed. The Americans were advancing through the Central Pacific, seizing islands one by one, building forward airfields and tightening the noose. Japan still believed Truk was too far, too protected, too strong to be attacked. They believed its defenses would force any American carrier fleet into a suicidal battle. And above all, they believed the Americans would not strike until the Japanese Navy was ready. They were wrong on all counts. American codebreakers had been reading Japanese communications for months. They knew Truk was overloaded with ships, aircraft, and unprepared defenses. They also knew something even more valuable. The Japanese fleet was planning to evacuate. If the Americans struck too late, the harbor would be empty. If they struck too early, the fleet would still be ready to fight. But for a brief moment in February 1944, the base was full, and the Japanese did not yet realize an attack was coming. The Americans planned a fast, brutal, and overwhelming strike. 5 fleet carriers, 4 light carriers, 7 battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and hundreds of aircraft formed one of the most powerful naval forces ever assembled. Their mission: destroy Truk's air power, sink every ship in the lagoon, and cripple Japan's ability to defend the Central Pacific. Unlike Midway or Coral Sea, this would not be a duel between fleets. It would be an execution. On the night of February 16, American carriers launched long-range scouting flights. Their pilots reported what the commanders had hoped for. The lagoon was full. Cargo ships, tankers, transports, destroyers, even cruisers, all trapped in the natural basin. It was the perfect target. At dawn on February 17, the sky erupted with the roar of hundreds of American aircraft. Dive bombers, torpedo planes, fighters, and reconnaissance squadrons rose into the morning light. Their plan was simple: strike the airfields first, destroy the defending fighters, and then return wave after wave to annihilate the ships trapped below. As the first American fighters approached the lagoon, they saw something surprising. No major Japanese carriers or battleships, but dozens of merchant vessels, transports, and auxiliaries. The Japanese fleet had begun evacuating, but not fast enough. Truk still held the support vessels the Japanese Navy desperately needed. The Americans were about to wipe them out. Japanese radar picked up the incoming attack too late. Their fighters scrambled in small, uncoordinated groups. Pilots with limited training faced experienced American aviators flying technologically superior aircraft. Dogfights erupted over the lagoon, spiraling among clouds and anti-aircraft fire, but the defenders were overwhelmed within minutes. With the skis secured, the next phase began. American bombers dove steeply onto the airfields, blasting fuel depots, hangars, ammunition stores, and barracks. Fireballs rolled across the runways. Japanese pilots who had not yet launched saw their aircraft destroyed on the ground in seconds. The entire defensive air wing was erased in a single morning. Now the lagoon lay exposed. Ships that had once felt safe behind the coral barrier realized they were trapped. Some attempted to flee toward the passes leading to open sea, but American torpedo planes were already waiting. Others dropped anchor and fired desperate anti-aircraft bursts, hoping for a miracle. None came. The Americans now focused on the heart of the operation, sinking every ship they could find. Dive bombers tore through the smoke-filled sky, peeling off one after another and plunging toward their targets. Torpedo planes raced low across the water, releasing their payloads at point-blank range. The lagoon became a graveyard in real time. Ships rolled over, ignited, or vanished beneath towering columns of steam. By midday, more than half the ships in the lagoon were damaged, burning, or sinking, and the Americans had only just begun. As the afternoon sun rose above the smoke-filled lagoon, the scale of destruction at Truk Lagoon became clear. American carrier aircraft continued hammering the harbor with relentless precision. The Japanese gunners who had survived the morning waves were exhausted, their ammunition dwindling, their guns overheated. Every attempt to regroup fell apart under the sheer weight of American air power. The Americans knew the ships inside Truk could not be replaced. Japan in 1944 was already struggling to move fuel, steel, aircraft, and food across its crumbling empire. Every tanker lost, every freighter sunk, meant factories without resources and soldiers without supplies. The goal of Operation Hailstone was not just to win a battle. It was to choke Japan's war machine to death. Torpedo planes hunted down vessels trying to escape through the reef passages. Some merchant ships attempted to beach themselves to avoid sinking, but American pilots simply struck them again and again until flames engulfed them. Others tried to hide behind small islands inside the lagoon, but the clear water and shallow depths made concealment impossible. Every ship was a target. Aircraft strafed rows of lifeboats, not out of cruelty, but to prevent Japanese sailors from manning coastal guns or returning to fight. Communication centers, radar stations, fuel tanks, and ammunition dumps were methodically destroyed. The island garrisons were cut off, blinded, and left powerless. As night approached, the Americans unleashed their second phase, surface bombardment. Battleships and cruisers opened fire with massive shells that shook the ground like earthquakes. Their barrage smashed warehouses, fuel storage, and submarine pens carved into the rock. Fires burned so intensely that the smoke rose miles into the night sky. But even as the carrier aircraft returned to refuel and rearm, the lagoon was still filled with targets. American reconnaissance photographs taken at dusk showed burning ships scattered across the basin, glowing through thick plumes of black smoke. The waters shimmered with oil slicks reflecting the flames above. Truk Lagoon, once the fortress of the Japanese Empire, was collapsing into chaos. Day 2 arrived with the same ferocity. American carriers launched fresh squadrons before sunrise. Many Japanese ships had sunk during the night, their masts poking above the lagoon like skeletal remains. Others lay capsized, still burning. Yet dozens more remained afloat, and the Americans intended to finish the job. Strikes focused on the northern anchorage where bunkers, repair facilities, and submarine bases were located. Torpedo planes skimmed just above the water, releasing their torpedoes into cruisers and destroyers that had attempted to hide among the atolls. Dive bombers plunged toward ships still stubbornly afloat, ripping open hulls and igniting ammunition stores. The lagoon echoed with violent explosions as ship after ship succumbed to the assault. Japanese resistance had nearly vanished. The surviving fighters were few and inexperienced, often launching without radios or functioning weapons. Many were shot down the moment they left the runway. The defenders on the ground fought bravely, but they were surrounded by destruction on every side. Their fortress had become a trap. By the afternoon of February 18, the battle was effectively over. The Americans had achieved total dominance. Their pilots had flown thousands of sorties, destroyed the island's infrastructure, and reduced the lagoon to a junkyard of twisted steel and sunken hulls. The losses Japan suffered were catastrophic. More than 40 large ships sunk or destroyed. Hundreds of aircraft eliminated, fuel reserves burned, and vital supply routes severed. For the Japanese Navy, Truk Lagoon was no longer a base. It was a graveyard. The heart of their Pacific operations had been ripped out, leaving them stretched thin across thousands of miles of ocean with no safe harbor to support their fleets. The loss was so severe that Japan never again attempted to defend its outer empire with large naval forces. From that moment forward, they were on the defensive everywhere. American pilots returning to their carriers reported scenes of devastation they had never imagined. Some described the lagoon as a vision of hell. Others spoke of the eerie calm as ships slowly slipped beneath the surface, swallowed by the clear blue water. Many of these wrecks remain today, preserved more perfectly than any battlefield on land, silent reminders of the day an empire lost its greatest fortress. Operation Hailstone was more than a battle. It was a strategic turning point. In just 48 hours, the United States shattered Japan's ability to wage war across the Pacific. Without Truk, the Japanese Navy lost its mobility, its supply lines, and its confidence. The Americans had shown they could strike anywhere, anytime with overwhelming force. The road to the Marianas, the Philippines, and ultimately Japan itself had opened wide. In the end, the attack on Truk Lagoon demonstrated the true nature of modern warfare. It wasn't always decided in long battles or massive fleets clashing at sea. Sometimes victory came from speed, intelligence, and the ability to strike with precision before the enemy even understood what was happening. Operation Hailstone proved that no fortress is invincible, no matter how remote, how fortified, or how legendary it may seem. And as the fires burned out and the smoke drifted away, the once mighty base of Truk Lagoon sank into history, a shattered empire lying beneath the waves, erased in just 2 days.